Penny from Heaven by Jennifer L. Holm. Chapter 7 The Translator. My mother's laughter wakes me up. It's a light, happy laugh, a sound I'm not used to hearing. I push back the covers and open the door to my room and go out to the parlor. I can see my mother through the screen door. She's standing on the porch talking to Mr. Mulligan. She's holding 4 bottles of milk. Pat, she says and laughs again. I open the screen door and they both stop talking. Hi, Bunny, she says. You're up early. It's hot, I say. Hi, Mr. Mulligan. Hello, Penny, he says with a big smile. Mr. Mulligan was just telling me how he might be getting a new route. Isn't that interesting, Penny? My mother asks. Real interesting, I say, trying not to roll my eyes. I better be off. Lots of deliveries yet, Mr. Mulligan says and tips his hat. He walks back to his truck whistling. We go inside to the kitchen and Mother pours a cup of coffee, smiling to herself. She didn't smile when I gave her the fox stole last night. She just shook her head and put it in the closet, saying, Now where would I ever wear this? It's going to be just you and Mimi and Pop Pop for dinner tonight, she tells me. I have to work late. Okay, I say. I feel bad for my mother sometimes. She works so hard. None of the other kids I know have mothers who have to work, but then most of them have fathers. Do you have to work at your uncle's store today? She asks. We have deliveries this afternoon. Her mouth purses slightly. Then be sure to give Mimi a hand with the chores this morning. I go to my bedroom and come back a moment later. Here, I say, holding out a small envelope. Uncle Ralphie paid me. Bunny, she says, you don't have to give me your money. I want to, I say, going over to the milk money jar and dropping it in. Maybe we can save up and buy a television. We'll see, she says, which means no. Are we going to Aunt Francine and Uncle Donald's for vacation this summer, I ask. Yes, she says, at the end of August. Do we have to? But that house is right on the lake, my mother says, by which she means the house belongs to relatives and is free. Aunt Francine is my mother's older sister. She and her husband have a cabin on Lake George in upstate New York, and we go there every summer. It should be fun, but it isn't, because I always have to watch their 7-year-old daughter, my cousin Llewellyn. Llewellyn's a brat. Last summer, she got mad because I wouldn't play dolls with her. That night, when we were taking a bath together, she reached across and turned on the hot water faucet, and it burned me on my back. Mother rushed me home to see Dr. Lafrop, our family doctor, because she didn't trust the doctor at the lake. I had to go to the hospital and everything. Dr. Lafrop had been in the army and knew all about burns and put this medicine on my back called scarlet red that stained everything I wore. I had to get a whole new wardrobe. The worst part, though, was watching my mother. She went kind of crazy when I got burned. The entire drive home, I kept telling her it didn't hurt. Dr. Lafrop said my nerve endings were destroyed, which is why I didn't feel any pain. I couldn't do anything for the rest of the summer. No playing, no baseball, no bicycle riding, no going to the beach, no nothing. I just lay on my stomach, listening to the radio and Pop Pop burping. But Mother thought I was going to die. Even now, I'm surprised she lets me leave the house. Well, I'm not taking any baths with Llewellyn, I say. That's probably a good idea, she says, buttering a piece of toast and passing it to me. Are you getting excited for your birthday? It's almost here. I guess, I say with a shrug. When I was little, I used to ask my mother for a father, but I haven't asked for that in a while. 12's a big birthday, she says. 12 has always seemed pretty old to me. The girls who are 12 are in 7th grade and worry about their hair and are always trying to borrow their older sister's bras. What did you get when you were 12? I ask, curious. My first real piece of jewelry, she says. Really? It was a single-strand pearl necklace. Mimi and Pop Pop said that 12 was old enough to take care of something precious. I still have it. I know that necklace, I say. I wore it to my very first dance. My dress was peach crepe de chine, she muses, looking out the window, twisting the ruby ring on her finger. It's her engagement ring from my father. The sun is streaming through the green gauzy curtains, and my mother looks so beautiful standing there. She is the most beautiful woman I know when she smiles, which isn't nearly often enough. Did you kiss him? I ask. The boy you went to the dance with? Penny! Well, did you? Now, what would you know about kissing, Bunny? Not much. I can't imagine kissing any boys, certainly none of the ones I go to school with. How can you kiss a boy who you watch pick his nose in kindergarten? My mother shakes herself and looks down at the watch on her wrist. Just look at the time. I'm going to be late for work at this rate, she says, and gives me a quick hug, her perfume swirling around me, lily of the valley. Long after she's gone, I imagine my mother, young, beautiful, and wearing a peach crepe de chine dress, twirling under the moon in my father's arms as Bing Crosby croons dancing in the dark. Mimi's cleaning up the breakfast dishes when Pop Pop says, "Thought I'd take Penny for a stroll into town. Need me to pick up anything?" Mimi smiles and says, "Let me get my list." Across the table, Pop Pop winks and I roll my eyes. I'm just his excuse to go to the tobacco shop to buy cigars. He's not supposed to smoke cigars anymore because Mimi doesn't like the way they smell up the house, but he still buys them every chance he gets and smokes them secretly. There's a pile of cigar stubs behind the azalea bush in the backyard that's been growing for a while now. Mimi hands me the list. She knows better than to give it to Pop Pop. "Ready to tear up the pea patch, old girl?" Pop Pop asks me as he slaps on his hat. "Ready," I say. We start down the block. Pop Pop's walking pretty good with his cane. I've noticed lately that he doesn't have too much trouble walking when he wants to get cigars. It's only when Mimi wants him to take out the trash that his old war wound starts acting up. "Hello, Mrs. Farrow," Pop Pop calls. Pop Pop was the block captain during World War II, so he knows everyone. During air raid drills, he had to go around the neighborhood, making sure that people had their curtains drawn and their lights off. Otherwise, the Germans and Japanese would know where to bomb us. Mrs. Dubowski, who lives next door and is kind of eccentric, would never turn her lights off during the drills, no matter how many times Pop Pop tried to reason with her. Pop Pop said he thought that we were going to be bombed to kingdom come because of that woman. "Your tomatoes are looking well," he says. "It's all this sun," Mrs. Farrow says. "I think it's our best harvest since the war." Pop Pop says that during the war, food was rationed, and near the end, there wasn't much meat. So people started making burger patties using mashed baked beans and called them Truman burgers after President Truman. Mimi says that there were butter shortages, so we used margarine. She said it came in white slabs, and to make it look better, you would knead in the yellow-orange coloring it came with. I still don't know what Germany and Japan had to do with us not having meat and butter. It's just one more thing I'll probably never understand, like why my mother doesn't like my father's family. My father's family doesn't talk about the war, but Pop Pop sure does. Every chance he gets. Pop Pop's favorite story is about a friend of his who was a translator. This fellow was in college at Harvard, and the government drafted him and taught him Japanese, and it was his job to interrogate the Japanese prisoners of war in California. The information he got from the prisoners helped the government decide to drop the atomic bomb on Nagasaki. The first atomic bomb was dropped in Hiroshima, but after the second bomb was dropped in Nagasaki, the Japanese gave up. Pop Pop showed me a photograph of the translator at the surrender of the Japanese at Tokyo Bay. He looked sort of sad. You'd think he'd be happy the war was over, but I guess he wasn't. Sometimes I feel like a translator. Mother is always asking me this or that about my father's family, and I have to try to figure out what she means. Like it's a different language. Certain things just get her upset, like when she finds out that the uncles have taken me to Shady Grove Cemetery. I don't know why this bothers her so much. You'd think she'd be happy I visit my father, but he has the opposite effect. Or if I go to the Catholic church with Nani, she gets angry even though she doesn't go to church herself. Or if they give me a fancy present or something like that, there are times when I just wish I knew the language she was speaking. Can we get lunch at the sweet shop? I asked Pop Pop. The sweet shop is a luncheonette that has a full fountain. They make awfully good egg creams and ice cream sundaes. Got to eat, I suppose, he says, and then mutters, Reckon any place is safer than your grandmother's kitchen. The sweet shop is nearly empty. It's too early for the lunch rush. There's a lady with her daughter sitting in a booth and a man sitting at the counter sipping coffee. We take seats at the counter and the waitress comes over to take our order. What can I get for you? Hamburger deluxe, Pop Pop says and turns to me. What'll you have? A sundae with butter pecan ice cream, please. Pop Pop looks at me. That's your whole lunch. Uh-huh, I say. Don't tell your grandmother, he says. The food arrives and I take a bite of my sundae. It's delicious. The hot fudge tastes perfect with the butter pecan ice cream. I watch Pop Pop as he carefully takes the lettuce and tomato and pickle and onion off the hamburger and sets them on a little plate on the side. He does the same with the fries. Why don't you just order a plain hamburger? I ask. I like the deluxe, he says. I like knowing I can eat it if I want to. But you never do, I say. What is this? An interrogation? Pop Pop polishes off his hamburger in about 4 bites and then leans back and burps loudly. I pretend that I don't know him. We pay and go back out and start down the street again. A bunch of men in army uniforms walk by us and enter the VFW hall. Usually on the 4th of July, all the veterans get dressed up and have a parade. Pop Pop says that after the war ended, there was a big ticker tape parade at New York City. Now that's a parade I'd like to have seen. Pop Pop stops outside the tobacco shop. I'll just be a minute. I sit down on the bench where another kid is already sitting. His name is Robert, and he's skinny and only in 2nd grade, and he's always sitting out here. Want one? He asks, showing me a handful of gumballs from his pocket. Thanks, I say, and take a red one. It's warm and melting, but I pop it in my mouth anyway. Where's Frankie? He asks. At home, I think. I say, I'm not surprised he knows Frankie. Everybody does. It's just the kind of boy Frankie is. What's your father smoke? I ask. Camels, he says. What about yours? Cigars, I say. It's my grandfather. He nods wisely. I thought he looked kind of old. A boy named Arthur comes up with his father. Wait here with the other kids, you hear? His father tells him. Arthur sits down next to Robert. We're like the 3 monkeys. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Next to the tobacco shop is a cafe. There are always old Italian men there, drinking dark coffee that looks like tar, served in little cups and reading the Italian language newspapers. They're newspapers that are printed in Italian so people can find out what's going on if they don't know English. Uncle Nunzio told me that my father used to write for one of these Italian language newspapers every once in a while, although his main job was writing for a regular English language newspaper. Buongiorno, signorina, they call to me. Buongiorno, I call back. How's the professor's little girl today? One of them asks. Good, thanks, I say. They all loved my father. He used to help them when he was alive, translating and writing letters, because most of them didn't know English. A lot of them fought for Italy in World War I. I've always thought it was confusing that Italy was on our side in World War I and on the other side in World War II. It must have been hard for my uncles who fought, because they might have been fighting against their own family. Maybe that's why they don't like to talk about the war. Stanley Teselwig and his older brother Jack walk by. Hi, Penny, Jack says, stopping in front of me. Hi, I say back, feeling a butterfly tickle in my stomach. Having a good summer? Jack asks. Sure, I say shyly. I've never really been interested in boys before, unlike some of the other girls at school, but Jack's different. Something about his curly dark hair and his green eyes. He sure is cute. Stanley's staring at my head. Say, Penny, what happened to your hair? I stammer. I got it cut. Boy, you should go to a different place next time, Stanley says. I close my eyes. When I open them, Pop Pop is standing next to Jack. These boys bothering you, Penny? Pop Pop asks with a scowl. Pop Pop, I say quickly. They look like trouble to me, he says, and burps loudly. Come on, Stanley says, grabbing Jack by his arm. We're going to be late. As they walk away, Jack looks back at me. I can see the shocked expression on his face from where I'm sitting. I got rid of them pretty good, didn't I? Pop Pop says in a pleased voice. You sure did, I say with a sigh. End of chapter 7.